The morning started like any other in a small American town, quiet as a hymn after the last amen. Coffee steamed from paper cups outside the courthouse, and the flag rustled just enough to whisper. Women in cardigans traded recipes and gentle smiles, the way neighbors do when life feels steady. Inside, a clerk hummed an old tune from Sunday service. Nobody knew the floor was about to tilt. Ruth adjusted her pearl earrings and checked her tote, the one with worn handles and a stitched bluebird. She walked past the portraits of judges, faces that had seen storms come and go. Sunlight spilled across the marble like spilled milk, soft and careless. She paused to help a stranger pick up scattered papers. You won't believe what happened. After that little kindness, if stories about courage and justice speak to your heart, I'd love for you to stay close. Go ahead and subscribe, and gently tap the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. We're walking through something real here, together, hand in hand. Your voice matters in this room, and there's more coming than anyone expects. By the security line, a baby fussed, then quieted as his grandmother hummed Blessed Assurance. Ruth smiled, remembering choir practice and those pew cushion whispers. A bailiff joked about the weather turning, and laughter bounced off the tile. Small talk wrapped everyone like a shawl. What nobody knew was how thin that shawl really was. On the corkboard, a posted schedule fluttered, the pushpin loose like a loose tooth, hearings, motions, and a line about civic duty. The printer had smudged a name, leaving a gray echo. Ruth tilted her head, curious about the echo. Sometimes a smudge is a sign if you're paying attention. She'd woken early, baked banana bread, and left a slice for her neighbor. Miss Carroll, the habit of kindness is a rhythm, steady as the church bell on a calm Friday. Ruth carried that rhythm with her into the courthouse halls. Every step sounded like a promise kept, and promises have a way of showing up when they're tested. Down the stairwell, the air ran cooler, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner and old books. A janitor nodded, tipping his cap, a simple blessing. Ruth thanked him and kept moving, heels clicking like a metronome. Somewhere above, a door glided shut. Little sounds stitched the morning into something fragile. She passed a bulletin about a food drive at St. Mark's and a grief group meeting on Thursday evenings. Mercy hung on that board like a hand-me-down coat anyone could borrow. Ruth thought about bringing canned peaches next time. She whispered a small prayer for the families listed. That prayer would linger longer than she knew. The courtroom pews were filling slow and familiar, like women settling in for a potluck. A young woman in a denim jacket tapped a nervous rhythm on her knee. An older man rubbed his wedding ring, staring at the seal on the wall. Ruth offered a gentle smile, the kind that says, "You're not alone." The room softened by a fraction. A clerk dropped a stapler and it clattered, sharp as a bird strike against glass. Everyone startled, then chuckled it off. Ruth knelt to help. Gather papers again, a habit she picked up from her mother. Do the small things faithfully, her mother used to say. Small things add up, like pennies in a jar. Outside, a siren wailed far away, then faded like a bad dream. The building held its breath and exhaled. Calm again. Ruth checked the time in her head and straightened her blazer. Her tote bag felt heavier than usual, as if secrets hid among her files. Secrets have weight, even when you can't name them. She slipped into a side hallway to call Miss Carroll, just to check on her blood pressure. They joked about aging bones and the miracle of a good night's sleep. "Text me if you need anything," Ruth said, voice sweet as tea. "You got it," Carol answered, a little winded but brave. Ruth tucked her phone away with a soft sigh. Deputy paced the corridor, shoes polished to a Sunday shine. His radio crackled, then hissed into silence, like a thought forming and dissolving. He glanced at Ruth, then away, then back again. Something in his eyes flickered between confusion and duty. That flicker never lies. In the lobby, light pooled under the big window like water in a shallow pan. Dust motes danced, carefree tiny stars in a daylight galaxy. Ruth loved that sight, the way ordinary things glow when love is near. She thought of psalm words about goodness following close. Hope can be a shadow that never leaves. You could feel a hush moving in, gentle at first. Conversations thinned. Like rain before the storm? A courthouse can sense change the way a bird senses snow. Ruth wrapped her cardigan tighter, though she wasn't cold. The hush pressed its fingertip to every mouth. An assistant carried a stack of files, color tabs like little flags. One tab slipped free and fluttered to Ruth's shoe. She bent, picked it up, and smiled. "Happens to the best of us," she said. Softly, the assistant blushed with relief. In the ladies' room, Ruth washed her hands longer than usual, eyes on the mirror. Water beaded like pearls, then traced slow paths away. The mirror held a woman who'd seen storms but always found the rainbow's edge. She whispered, "Be gentle, be firm, be fair." The mirror did not argue. Back in the hall, a pastor's wife squeezed her arm, a kind touch that says, "I see you." The wife spoke about a church bake sale and a neighbor with a stubborn furnace. Life's small dramas marched along, steady as ever. Ruth nodded and promised to donate. Promises make a path through any crowd. A young clerk offered mint gum, an unexpected kindness with sharp sweetness. Ruth accepted, chuckled, and tucked it into her tote. She loved simple grace notes like that. Little gifts that changed nothing yet changed the tone of everything. The day kept tuning itself down another corridor. Framed photos showed ribbon cuttings and scholarships. Faces beamed under confetti like it was always spring. Ruth lingered at a photo of a little girl holding a certificate. She felt a tug at her heart, maternal and fierce. Justice is also about protecting the small. The bailiff announced a brief delay, voice calm, almost musical. People shifted, stretched, checked their phones, then looked up again. Routine is a warm blanket and everyone pulled it higher. Ruth took a deep breath and steadied her shoulders. Warm blankets can slip off in a blink. See thought of scripture. That calls us to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. The words fit like a well-worn glove. She carried them the way grandmothers carry recipes in their heads. Fold this, stir that. Don't forget the pinch of grace. Mercy rises like yeast when the heat comes. In a corner, two officers spoke in low tones, their posture a little too tight. One tapped his radio, the other rubbed his jaw. They weren't unkind, just keyed up, like strings tuned too sharp. Ruth noticed, then filed it away. Observation is a form of prayer. A fly buzzed against the window, frantic and stubborn. The janitor raised the glass an inch, and the fly found its freedom. Everybody sighed as if they'd been waiting for that. "Tiny rescue," Ruth whispered. "Go on, little one. Freedom is always worth the trouble." Someone nearby mentioned a mix-up with names, a simple clerical hiccup. Another person shrugged, said it happens. Nothing to see here, but the hiccup kept hiccuping. A rhythm you can't ignore. Ruth tilted, her head like a bird listening for a worm. The ground had a story to tell. A woman in a navy blazer asked Ruth if she knew where courtroom 3 was. Ruth pointed left, then right, then smiled. "You'll see a painting of a lighthouse," she said. "Follow that light." The woman laughed, grateful for directions that felt like a blessing. The air shifted as clouds dimmed the sun for a heartbeat. The lobby felt narrower as if the walls were leaning in to listen. Conversations fell into pockets of silence. Ruth smoothed a wrinkle from her sleeve, the gesture practiced and calm. .com can be courage in soft clothing. A door opened somewhere, and the soft sound carried like a bell through a fog. The deputy from earlier looked up, alert but trying to seem casual. His hand hovered near his badge, then fell away. Ruth noticed he swallowed hard. Even seasoned hearts swallow before a crossing. She remembered her grandmother's words, "When you don't know what's next, be kind next." It had saved Ruth more than once. She resolved to live it again that morning. Kindness as compass. Mercy as map. The path ahead was about to fork. A court reporter trundled past with a rolling case, its wheels squeaking like old church steps. "Morning," she said, and Ruth answered in kind. They shared a brief smile that held more than pleasantries. Smiles can carry people across rough water. Neither knew what water was coming. From the staircase you could hear a murmur rising, faint as a tide. Shoes, whispers, a question asked twice. The building took in the sound and offered it back, softer. Ruth paused at the landing, hand on the rail. The rail felt warm, as if many prayers had passed through it. She straightened again, lifted her chin, and stepped into the flow of people. The light ahead brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again. You could taste tension like salt on your tongue. Someone said her name, then stopped mid-syllable, surprised. Surprises have a way of showing up early. A young mother dropped a pacifier, and Ruth stooped to hand it back. "Thank you," the mother braved, eyes tired but brave. "You've got this," Ruth said, meaning it. Courage recognizes courage, even in small packages. The young mother smiled, and the room felt kinder. Two officers stepped into the corridor, posture crisp, eyes scanning. They weren't aggressive, exactly more like braced. One looked right past Ruth, as if his mind had a photograph and she didn't match. The other touched his ear, listening to a voice no one else could hear. The next heartbeat stretched long. Ruth's footsteps slowed, then stopped, as if the floor had a soft slope. She felt the tiny tremor of a moment deciding what it wants to be. Her breath came steady, practiced, prayerful. "Be fair," she whispered, almost to the air itself. Fairness can feel like a thin thread, but it holds. Somewhere a gavel tapped once. Not twice, not loud, just enough to mark time. The sound found every ear and settled there. People turned as if choreographed by an unseen hand. Ruth felt a hush inside the hush, and the hush was looking straight at her. What came next would redraw the morning like chalk in the rain. Faces would shift, stories would bend, a name would matter in a way names rarely do. Narrowed as the officers stepped in, uniforms crisp as winter air. Their boots sounded like a clock, ticking faster than it should. Ruth felt the tide of the crowd pull back, quiet as a held breath. One officer scanned faces the way a lifeguard scans water. Something in his jaw said decision was already loading. Officer Collins nodded at the deputy, a small nod that meant business. His hand hovered near the radio, then settled, then hovered again. He looked right through Ruth as if searching for a description on legs. The word echoed like a stone in a well. Deputy Miller cleared his throat, the courteous kind that hides a warning. He angled his shoulders, marking a boundary only he could see. People edged back, a shuffle of rubber soles and nerves. Ruth stood still, palms open, posture gentle as a porch light. She'd learned that calm is sometimes the only lighthouse. A file cart rolled by and snagged against a doorframe. The squeak felt louder than it should. A violin string pulled tight. Collins glanced over, then returned to his mental photograph. Black tote, blue scarf, he muttered, as if reading from a script. Ruth instinctively touched her scarf, simple as breathing. Sergeant Brooks arrived, older, steady, with a face made of long days. He offered a thin smile that tried to soften the edges. "Let's keep this orderly," he said, and the air obeyed him first. Ruth nodded because order, when righteous, is mercy in shoes. But order can be cruel when it's looking the wrong way. A young mother shifted her baby higher and whispered a prayer. Someone near the wall said they heard about a name mix-up. Another voice shushed them like a librarian guarding quiet hope. Ruth caught the word mix-up and folded it into memory. Officer Collins looked at Ruth again, longer this time. "Identification, please," he said, not unkind but set like concrete. Ruth reached for her badge holder, patience wrapped around each motion. Before she could lift it, the sergeant raised a palm, slow. "Let her speak," he said. "A small favor against a bigger tide." Ruth smiled, the kind that says, "We can do this right." "My name is Ruth," she began, voice warm, Sunday soft. Her words met a wall called urgency and slid off. Collins's radio crackled with a garbled confirmation. He heard what he wanted or feared or both. The bailiff stepped forward, caught between duties like a man on thin ice. He lifted his chin toward the officers, then toward Ruth. "Gentlemen," he said, a single word threaded with plea. The sergeant's eyes weighed the room, then the clock. You could feel him choosing and not liking the options. Behind them, the courthouse seal gleamed like a silent witness. The flag barely stirred, as if even fabric knew to hold its tongue. An older couple held hands, rings catching the light. A clerk pressed her lips together to keep courage inside. Ruth kept breathing, slow and faithful as a hymn. "Ma'am, we need to step over here," Collins said, gesturing. His fingers were careful, but the space they drew was tight. Ruth took one small step, measured, unafraid, anchored. She glanced at the sergeant, seeking the human under the badge. In his eyes, a flicker, duty versus doubt. The young officer beside Collins looked barely out of college. He swallowed, then straightened, then copied the stance he was taught. Training can be a script that forgets the plot twist. Ruth offered a soft, steady look that says, "I see your heart." He blinked, and for a second the script loosened. Someone whispered, "She's not who they think." The words floated like dandelion seed, almost landing, then drifting. Ruth felt the whisper brush her shoulder like a shawl. She had half a mind to answer it aloud. Instead, she waited for truth to find its microphone. Sergeant Brooks rubbed the bridge of his nose. Weary habit. "Ma'am, do you have official identification?" "On you." Ruth lifted the leather holder, slow as sunrise. "Always," she said, offering it like bread. "Not proof." Bread can be refused by the hungry, and sometimes is. Collins reached, then paused, then reached again. His eyes flicked, fast as a sparrow. He looked at the scarf, the tote, the tom, the not matching knee thin. Then he looked at the other officer, and fear borrowed his voice. Ruth's hand stayed steady, palm open, nothing to hide. She prayed it for them as much as for herself. Mercy is a circle that includes even those who draw lines. The circle felt delicate and necessary. The bailiff tried to recenter the room with a practiced cough. "Folks, let's give the officers some space, please." Chairs scraped a low tide of movement and worry. A teenager clutched her grandfather's sleeve, eyes wide. He patted her hand because sometimes that's all you can do. Brooks took the badge holder, thumb gentle on the edge. His gaze skimmed, then slowed, then hovered. An almost smile tugged, then retreated like a skittish bird. He looked up at Ruth, searching for a missing puzzle piece. The radio snapped again, louder, shoving the moment aside. "Copy that," Collins said, too quickly, as if speed could be truth. He stepped closer, near enough to borrow Ruth's steadiness. "Ma'am, we'll sort this out in a side room." His tone was cordial, but the corridor shrank another inch. Ruth stood her ground, kindness firm as oak. A murmur rose from the back, the sort that carries doubt. Someone said, "This isn't right," soft but clear. The words touched the sergeant's shoulder like a tap from conscience. He shifted, then cleared his throat, a storm cloud undecided. "I'm here to serve justice, not hinder it," she said. Her voice warmed the tiles without raising the temperature. The younger officer's jaw softened, barely, but he didn't see aggression, he saw a script with blank lines. Blank lines scare people who live by checklists. Ruth lifted her chin, offering trust anyway. Trust sometimes looks like risk in a nice blazer. A courthouse door clicked, the sound crisp as a snapped twig. The room's attention pivoted, then rebounded. Brooks handed the badge holder back. Slower now. He opened his mouth to say the simple, true thing. The radio barged in like a rude cousin at supper. The baby fussed again, small thunder in a bottled sky. His mother swayed, humming the chorus Ruth knew by heart. The melody threaded the hallway with a soft kind of courage. Ruth smiled, soaking it up like sun on cold skin. Music can buy you seconds, sometimes the precious kind. "Side room now?" Collins repeated, a notch tighter. He gestured toward a door with frosted glass. The words were still polite. The path not so much. Ruth looked at the bailiff, then the sergeant, then the crowd. Witnesses matter when truth is about to be tested. A clerk near the copier whispered, "I recognize her." Her whisper grew legs and trotted down the line. Heads tilted, eyes widened. Hearts did their math. Ruth felt the equation solving itself. Almost there. Almost as a fragile bridge. The younger officer shifted his weight, uncertainty leaking out. He glanced at Brooks, seeking a new cue. Brooks exhaled long, like a man choosing between storms. He opened his palm as if to release something heavy. What he released was only a breath. Ruth thought of her grandmother's kitchen table. Decisions there were salted with prayer and second chances. "Let's talk here, where everyone can see," she offered. Transparency is the kind of light that keeps shadows honest. Collins flinched at the word see as if it burned. The floor felt tilted again, a soft slide toward trouble. Ruth adjusted her scarf, a small act of dignity. The fabric brushed her wrist like a promise kept. She anchored her gaze to the sergeant's better angel. Angels stand ready when invited. A church elder from town stepped forward half a step. He stopped himself, hands clasped, lips moving in silent prayer. Courage can look like restraint in a courthouse hallway. Ruth noticed and tucked that strength into her pocket. "We borrow each other's bravery, one breath at a time. Identification appears in order," Brooks said at last. The words floated like a lifeboat everyone could fit inside. Collins blinked, not prepared for safety. His radio, unhelpful as ever, hissed another uncertainty. Doubt sat on his shoulder and refused to leave. Ruth kept her tone velvet firm. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said. The sentence placed furniture back in the right rooms. The younger officer almost smiled. Almost. Almost again, that slippery little cliff. The bailiff nodded, relief peeking over his collar. He gestured to the courtroom door, inviting Normal back. Normal hesitated on the threshold, wary of a trap. Ruth inhaled hope, exhaled patience, waited. Waiting can be a form of leadership. Then the crowd shifted in a ripple. No one started. Someone jostled, someone apologized, the kind of domino you miss. Collins stepped forward on reflex, training in full bloom. He reached for Ruth's elbow, not rough, not gentle, definitive. The younger officer mirrored him a heartbeat later. Ruth lifted her free hand, slow as a blessing. "Sir," she said, steady, respectful, clear. Collins's grip tightened by a hair's width. The room gasped like a congregation at an unexpected confession. Brooks moved, but the moment moved faster. A single word rose from the back, truth finally finding its legs. The clerk who whispered before spoke louder, braver, certain. Her voice broke the glass on the frosted door without touching it. Ruth watched Collins hear it, deny it, then hear it again. The next beat held its breath, balancing on a razor's edge. There was still time for the gentler road, barely beautifully. A mercy-sized window opened just enough for light. Ruth waited inside. That light? Both hands visible, heart visible too. The officer stood with her in that thin place, trembling, and with the tiniest tilt the whole morning began to tip. The grip on Ruth's elbow shifted from guidance to control. Not a yank, not yet, but a firm claim on her movement. The crowd felt the change the way geese feel winter. A rustle went through the hallway, coats, whispers, nerves. Ruth's breath stayed even, prayer tucked just behind it. "Sir," she said again, softer, clearer, steady as a plumb line. Collins didn't answer. Training spoke louder than voices. His partner mirrored the hold, 2 hands, 2 intentions. Brooks half-stepped, then stopped. The clock louder now. Every second scratched the tile like a restless shoe. The door with frosted glass blinked light across their faces. Ruth's scarf brushed her wrist, a small reminder of gentleness. Then the move came, a twist, decisive, misread as necessary. Her shoulder turned under their hands, balance tipping. Gasps cracked open like dry branches in a wind. A chair scraped. The baby cried. A phone clattered. The corridor folded into a funnel of shock. Ruth stumbled, not by panic, but by physics. Her tote slid, papers fanning like startled birds. Collins tightened. The younger officer locked in. "Easy," Brooks said, voice low. The words swallowed by motion. Ruth's back met the cool wall. A firm, unkind hello. Not a slam, but more than a nudge, enough to bruise. Her pearl earring tapped tile like a tiny bell. Silence rushed in right after the sound. The bailiff lifted his palm, courtroom code for hold. No one did. Momentum had opinions of its own. Ruth kept her hands visible, palms open as a benediction. "I'm not resisting," she said, velvet over steel. The younger officer's jaw flickered with almost regret. Someone whispered, "This can't be happening twice." The second time was a prayer, not a sentence. Ruth steadied herself with breath. Then another breath. Her grandmother's voice rose. Kindness next, even now. She offered it like water to a fire that wouldn't listen. Collins slid one wrist toward. Restraint, intention, crisp. The click threatened to arrive, small, metallic, permanent. Ruth lifted her chin, not defiant, simply dignified. "Please," she said. The word a porchlight left on. Porchlights matter when storms steal directions. The sergeant's hand hovered, choosing a side of his own conscience. "Collins," he said, just the name, a bridge not yet crossed. But the tide was already gnawing at the pilings. A knee nudged. Ruth's calf, her stance forced narrower. She shifted, protecting balance and the delicate circle of mercy. A clerk near the copier trembled, then found her voice. "Stop," she said, louder than she meant, clear as a bell. The word flicked across badges and landed on hearts. Collins blinked. The younger officer hesitated half a second. Sometimes half a second can save an hour of grief. Not this time. The script demanded a line. Ruth's tote was nudged by a boot, papers skittering. A page with a lighthouse watermark slid under Collins's heel. He didn't see the light, just the paper in the way. He planted his foot as if truth were a floorboard. Ruth winced at a sharp pinch in her shoulder. The wall gave nothing back except cold honesty. Still, she kept her voice gentle, almost pastoral. "I'm here to help you get this right." She said hope is stubborn, like that holy and a little unreasonable. A woman from St. Mark's took one step forward. Her husband held her sleeve, whispering, "Let them handle it." "But they aren't," she whispered back, eyes wet. Tears gathered without falling, small prayers in the making. The hallway saw them and remembered its humanity. The baby's cry turned to a wail, then a shudder. His mother hummed the hymn. Again, courage in a lullaby. The melody brushed Collins's ear, then kept going. Music does that, sidesteps armor, knocks softly on the door. Inside, something old and kind stirred, reluctant but real. Brooks finally claimed authority with a harder voice. "Enough," he said. Syllables like stones placed in a river. The current slowed, not stopped, but slowed. He eased one officer's hand a fraction to the side. A fraction can be the size of mercy. Ruth exhaled, then inhaled, making room for hope. Her hands stayed open. Her eyes stayed steady. "Sir, look again," she said, gift-trapping the moment. She did not plead. She invited truth to show up. Truth often arrives when invited by dignity. Collins looked, then didn't, then almost did. He was young enough to be brave, old enough to be afraid. Fear likes uniforms because it looks like certainty. Ruth met his gaze and offered him a softer path. Paths appear under feet that choose them. Another nudge, another scrape, another gasp. The wall held Ruth like a page pressed in a book. The book was about justice, and the margins were crowded. Her elbows smarted. Her shoulder ached, but her spirit stood tall. Pain visited. It did not get to unpack. A court reporter whispered a verse about peacemakers. Her voice trembled, but the words knew what to do. They floated to the ceiling and settled like calm dust. Ruth felt them land and steady her bones. Blessing walks. In on tiptoe during noise, Sergeant the bailiff said, "Not loud, not timid." Brooks nodded, a decision loading like sunrise. He placed himself between haste and harm. "Step back," he told Collins. A clear, firm mercy. Haste does not like to be told no. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Then the younger officer's hands loosened first. Collins's grip followed, half a pace behind courage. Ruth eased her, shoulder off the wall, slow, thankful. The crowd's lungs remembered what air was for. Apologies hovered but didn't land. The script had no line for them. Ruth gathered her tote, wincing only with her eyes. A paper with the lighthouse found. Her shoe again. She picked it up like you pick up a fallen blessing. Light, once seen, insists on being seen again. Brooks studied Ruth, studied the room, studied himself. He saw harm done without hatred, and knew that mattered. Harm without hatred still harms. Justice still owes repair. He swallowed the hard truth. Like medicine without sugar? Ruth's calm made the swallowing possible. The crowd shifted into a hush, shaped like a question. What just happened? And what happens next? The question hung low, ripe, nearly ready to drop. Ruth stood in it like a tree that has survived storms. She gave shade even to those who bent her branches. Somewhere, a gavel tapped once again. Reminder and rhythm. The building remembered its purpose, trembling a little. Ruth rolled her shoulder, testing pain, finding limits. Limits can guide us to better choices if we listen. She listened with her whole self, tender and unshaken. "Let's walk," Brooks said, voice no longer divided. He meant, walk forward, walk wiser, walk seen. Ruth nodded, neither small nor grand, simply whole. The younger officer stepped back, eyes learning, but someone would say something in the next breath. There was a name waiting at the edge of silence. A key already cut, hovering near the lock. The door between confusion and clarity began to breathe. Ruth adjusted her scarf. The blue like calm water. She lifted her chin and let quiet do its work. Hope slid back into the room. Watchful, the hymn's last note lingered in the vents. You could almost hear the truth warming its voice. In the back, the clerk who had trembled found steel. She stepped into the thin light with borrowed courage. Her lips formed the syllables. That matter most. Every eye turned. Even the flag seemed to lean. The moment waited, open-palmed and listening. Ruth met the clerk's gaze and nodded once. Permission to tell the truth is a holy thing. The clerk inhaled like a swimmer before deep water. Her first word carried both apology and fire. The second word was the match. Brooks looked from Ruth to Collins to the younger officer. He knew the next second could rearrange an entire morning. He braced, not against truth, but for it. Ruth stood steady, ready to bless the right outcome. Some doors only open when someone dares to knock. A grandmother in a fleece jacket whispered, "Lord, help." Simple, sincere, nothing fancy, everything needed. The prayer walked straight into the center of the room. It took a chair and waited like family. Ruth felt its hand on her shoulder, kinder than the wall. Pain hummed in her arm, but refused to sing lead. Dignity took the melody, strong, bright, unbroken. Around them, shame tried to draft an alibi. Mercy drafted a future instead, softly, insistently. The hallway chose which draft to read aloud. Ruth glanced at the lighthouse watermark one more time. Light remembers the way, even when people forget. She smoothed the paper, a small ritual of restoration. The edges lined up like a path found again. Paths are easier to share once someone sets them straight. A hush fell that felt like the edge of a revelation. Not thunder, not fireworks, just the clean snap of clarity. Collins's shoulders slumped a fraction, something yielding. The younger officer's eyes lifted, new understanding blooming. Brooks's stance changed from barrier to bridge. Ruth did not move first. Wisdom told her to wait. The clerk swallowed, the crowd leaned, the hymn rested. Even the elevator paused on the wrong floor listening. Every element of the morning tilted toward meaning, and in the very next breath, the name began to rise. The clerk's voice finally found the strength it needed. "Judge Ruth," she said, clear as a bell over Sunday traffic. The syllables lifted, hung, and poured across the hallway. Every head turned like sunflowers finding light. You could feel the word judge changed the air. It landed on badges and shoulders in careful stances. Collins blinked twice, as if clearing rain from his eyes. The younger officer's posture stumbled, then stood again. Brooks went very still, the kind of still that decides. Silence pressed in, a respectful kind, a convicted kind. Ruth did not move, did not flinch, did not scold. She let the truth breathe first, then she breathed with it. Her pearls were slightly askew. Dignity, somehow not. Thank you, she told the clerk. Gratitude, steady and warm. Gratitude has a way of teaching without wagging a finger. Brooks reached for the badge wallet like it was scripture. He read the seal, the signature, the appointment date. The lines were familiar. The meaning felt heavier now. Presiding judge, he murmured almost to himself. Duty met reverence and took off its hat. Collins stared at the embossed gold like it could talk. His jaw unclenched a fraction, history arriving late. He swallowed the taste of mistake, metal and pride. Ma'am, Your Honor, he corrected, voice thin with learning. Learning sometimes scrapes on the way in. The younger officer stepped back half the width of Mercy, his hands lifted, empty, ready to start over. He looked 19 and 40. At the same time, Your Honor, he tried again, this time finding the note. The note sounded like humility with boots on. Ruth smoothed her scarf, blue as a promise kept. Let's restore order, she said, gentle as a kitchen prayer. No anger, just clarity with a soft edge. Her words set chairs back on their legs. Order exhaled, grateful to be invited kindly home. The clerk Janet from the records office stepped forward. She's our judge, Janet said, courage now steady. I filed her docket this morning, courtroom 3. Her voice shook only on the first syllable. Everyone heard the truth stand up straight. The courthouse seal on the wall seemed to lean closer. The flag lifted like it caught a better wind. Tiles quit echoing panic and took up poise. Even the copier held its cough. Respect found the room. Again, hat in hand, Dot Brooks returned the badge like a fragile heirloom. Your Honor, he said, and meant every grain of it. He didn't hide the regret in his eyes. Regret is honest when it shows up without excuses. Honesty opened a small, needed window. Ruth nodded once, blessing the window wider. We'll handle this properly, she said, calm as oak. She did not reach for blame, she reached for light. Light makes better tools than shame. The hallway, brightened by a shade you could feel, Collins's radio crackled with leftover confusion. Old instructions tried to resurrect themselves. Brooks clicked it low, like turning down a fussy hymn. Stand by, he told the static and the past. Sometimes leadership is volume control on fear. Ladies and gentlemen, the bailiff finally announced, please remain respectful. The court recognizes her honor. His voice wore its Sunday suit at last. People straightened as if they'd been called by name. Names matter when truth introduces itself. Ruth glanced at the officer's eyes, soft but unswerving. We all serve the same thing, she said. Justice, done with mercy. The words did not scold, they shepherded. Even tired hearts will follow. A good shepherd. A verse drifted between ceiling lights and landed kindly. Blessed are the peacemakers, it hummed without fuss. No denomination argued. Nobody needed to. Peace is pan-denominational when it's this plain. The room answered with a long, humbled breath. The baby's cry melted into a hiccup, then quiet. His mother whispered, thank you, to God and to calm. A grandmother dabbed her eyes with a tissue from Publix. The small-town chorus came back on key. Kindness hummed underneath like a bass line. Janet held up a sheet with the lighthouse. Watermark? Court stationery, she explained. Practical and brave. Ruth smiled. She loved that lighthouse. A steady symbol. Light that does not move even when storms do. Everyone saw it. Finally, for what it was, Collins shifted, shame tugging at his sleeve. Your Honor, I was told, he started. Ruth raised a gentle palm, not to silence but to soothe. We will address every step, she promised. Promises given calmly are bridges, not walls. The younger officer found his voice beside an apology. Are you hurt? He asked, simple and human. Ruth rolled her shoulder once and answered softly. I'm all right, she said, truth without theatrics. All right can still mean something needs mending. Brooks resumed command with a different spine. Holster it, he said, not weapons, but pride and pace. He looked to the bailiff, then to the open door. Let's seat the court, he added, voice clean. Clean voices rinse out muddied moments. Ruth gathered her tote. Janet retrieved the scattered pages. The lighthouse sheet went on top, as if, by design, Ruth's fingers lingered there, blessing the symbol again. Thank you, she told Janet, 2 words full of home. Home is people who stand beside truth when it wobbles. A handful of spectators bowed their heads. Not a performance, just a reflex toward heaven. Lord, make this right, traveled the distance fast. The prayer fit the hallway like it had the blueprint. Ruth felt it steady the center of the day. She turned to Collins, her expression maternal and firm. Officer, I trust you to learn from this, she said. Trust is heavier than anger and twice as strong, he nodded. jaw working, eyes brighter with newness. Newness often arrives wearing remorse. The courthouse door swung, Wood breathing like an old pew. Light from courtroom 3 washed the threshold. You could smell paper, ink, and the long patience of law. Ruth stepped toward it, measured. No rush. No retreat. Every step reassembled dignity in plain sight. The flag beside the door stirred as if to escort her. The seal looked less like decoration and more like calling. People created an aisle without deciding to respect No's choreography. By heart, Ruth walked through it like a hymn walks through silence. Brooks matched her pace, one step back, protective without show. The younger officer followed, learning with his whole face. Collins stayed rooted, a heartbeat longer than moved. You could see a career split, then choose a better lane. Choices are sermons people preach to themselves. At the doorway, Ruth paused. Hesitation, intention. She scanned the faces. The mother, the grandmother, Janet. She saw fear, relief, and a thread of hope knitting them. "Let's do this in the light," she said softly. Light nodded, ready that the bailiff's hand touched. The gavel like a promise? He glanced at Ruth, waiting for the right breath. The room behind the door held its own hush. A hush that knows justice is about to speak. Words gathered like choir members finding their notes. Outside, a siren passed and kept going, blessing by absence. Inside, shoes scuffed, hearts steadied, eyes lifted. Even the vending machines settled into reverence. Ordinary things love to witness extraordinary rightness. They tell it later in their small, faithful ways. Ruth set her tote on the council table for a second. She squared the lighthouse page, then the others. Order, then mercy, then clarity, her silent sequence. She touched her pearls, the tiny bell that started it all. Bells can call us to worship or to work, sometimes both. Collins hovered near the threshold, apology unfinished. Ruth didn't press him. The work would do the teaching. She turned her attention to the bench, to the calling. The room turned with her, like a congregation rising. Rising felt right, the grandmother in fleece whispered. Praise God, barely audible. No one argued with gratitude walking by. Gratitude has grandmother hands warm, wrinkled, stubborn. It held the morning together where it had split. Stitch by stitch, breath by breath, grace by grace. Ruth nodded to the bailiff. The cue had finally arrived. He lifted the gavel not as a weapon, but as a choir pitch. The first tap would realign the room's heartbeat. The second would invite voices to speak plainly. Between taps, a last thin thread of doubt trembled. Janet slipped into a seat near the front, pen ready. She met Ruth's eyes with a small, loyal smile. Loyalty doesn't need to be loud to be strong. It sits close and keeps good notes. Good notes will matter in the minutes ahead. Brooks positioned himself where protection and humility meet. He wasn't the hero. He was the hinge. Hinges don't get thanked enough, but doors need them. He set his face toward repair, not reputation. Repair is a holy word in work boots, Ruth inhaled, a slow measure, and let her shoulders settle. The room waited with her, no tugging, no rush. She could feel the weight of example on her bones. Example is heavier than anger and kinder in the end. Kind becomes contagious when leaders choose it. In the corridor behind them, whispers restarted. Tentative, not gossip relief, trying out its voice. Questions lined up like schoolchildren after recess. Each question carried a heartbeat and a history. They would need answers, and soon the gavel hovered, wood over wood, moment over moment. Ruth's gaze softened on the crowd, then sharpened on purpose. Court is now in session, hovered just behind her lips. Hope stepped closer, ready to speak in a clear register. And right then, the first reaction rose like a tide from the back. The word Your Honor kept rippling through the corridor like a pebble dropped in a quiet lake. Hands lowered, shoulders unclenched, but the shock stuck around like static. People searched each other's faces, trying to redraw what they thought they knew. Ruth stood steady, a lighthouse after the wave, not after the storm. Curiosity held the room, asking a dozen soft questions at once. Phones appeared like prairie dogs, cautious, then bold. A niece texted her aunt, "You won't believe this." At the courthouse, screens blinked, boundaries blurred, and rumor sprinted. For the exit, the bailiff lifted a hand, calm as a porch light at dusk. "Respect, folks," he said, and some of the screens went dark. Collins swallowed an apology that didn't know its shape yet. Ruth spared him the scramble, meeting his eyes with kindness. That look traveled farther than any lecture could. It said, "We can fix what we name, we can mend what we face." The crowd read it and breathed a hair deeper. A teenager edged forward, camera still raised, unsure. Ms. Perez from the high school whispered, "Maybe give it a rest." Transparency wrestled with dignity right there on the tiles. Ruth nodded thanks to the teacher, gratitude small and bright. The teen dropped the phone, cheeks warm, heart pounding. The pastor's wife reached for a friend's hand, then let go. No circle yet. Not here, not now, but almost. Prayer hovered like a bird on a fence, ready to land. The bailiff's eyes softened, seeing the gentler storm gather. Thunder was traded for hush and hush for listening. From the doorway, Megan from the Gazette slid in with a notebook. She moved like a librarian in a hurricane, fast and careful. Her pen scratched questions that didn't have places to live yet. Ruth noticed and did not flinch from the ink. Truth prefers daylight even when it stings a little. A grandmother leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Mercy." He nodded like a man who has seen fields heal after hail. Somewhere, someone mentioned the Dairy Queen on Main because even on heavy days, small-town life still peeks through. The normal tried to anchor the strange, and it helped. Ruth scanned the crowd, searching for anyone hurting. "Is anyone injured?" she asked, voice like warm tea. A mother lifted her hand halfway, then lowered it. "I'm okay," she said, though her nerves twitched. Ruth's nod wrapped the woman in a gentle blanket. The younger officer found his words and offered them bare. "I'm sorry," he said, not polished, just true. It landed like clean rain on a dusty porch. No one clapped. The room simply absorbed. The honesty? Sometimes that's how repair begins. Without ceremony, Collins' radio dispatch tone new, steadier, humbled. "Correction," he said, clearing the old script out. The hallway listened to the reboot in real time. Even the vending machine seemed to pause its hum. Surprise turned a corner toward relief. Not all at once. Janet lifted the lighthouse page, holding it like a lantern. "I can swear to the docket and the schedule," she said. Her voice carried more backbone than before. A paper can be a shield when it tells the truth. Ruth smiled, and the shield shone brighter. Brooke stepped forward, owning the middle with both hands. "Folks, we'll proceed with care and transparency," he said. "Give us patience and we'll give you clarity." His words sounded like Micah spoken in plain clothes. People settled, not satisfied but steadier. From the back, Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, restless. "What about accountability?" he asked, voice gravel and grief. The word accountability flew straight, sharp, needed. Ruth nodded, meeting him in the open. "We will not skip that chapter," she promised. She turned her stance slightly south. The whole room felt invited. "Your statements matter," she said, with courtroom calm. "We'll collect them clean and fair. No rush, no spin." It felt like chairs scooted closer without moving an inch. Hope started its quiet work under the table. The teenager Tyler lifted his phone with trembling duty. "I recorded part of it," he said, eyes wide. Ruth thanked him as if he had brought water to a fire. Evidence is a gift when offered without malice. Surprise hummed again, this time useful, not wild. Pastor John stepped in like a bridge with shoes. "Let's speak truth without tearing each other," he said. A beatitude breathed between his syllables and stayed. No one asked his denomination. Hearts do not check labels. Peacemaking, war denim, and a quiet backbone. The bailiff rolled out a clipboard like a runway. "Names for statements," he announced. Steady and fair. Pens clicked, courage lined up, stories cleared their throats. Order walked back in, not stiff, just upright. People like upright. It helps them stand. Maria from custodial staff raised a careful hand. "I saw from the corner by the vending machine," she said. Her details were small and exact, like stitches that hold. Ruth listened like a neighbor, not a throne. Truth blooms when it feels safe in the room. Linda, a nurse from St. Mark's Clinic, stepped closer. "Your shoulder." "Okay," she asked, eyes sharp and kind. Ruth rolled it once, pain honest but contained. "I'll be fine," she said, meaning more. Then muscle. Care arrived without drama and set a gentle tone. Collins stared at the tile, then at Ruth, then at the flag. "I accept whatever review is required," he said. His voice picked a harder road and stayed on it. Ruth's answer was short, like a yes with open doors. "Good," she said, and the air got cleaner. Outside the courthouse, footsteps gathered. Like rain on a porch, faces pressed the glass with worry and neighborly love. A patrol car idled, waiting for instructions shaped like wisdom. No sirens, just engines, thinking about next steps. Inside, Ruth chose calm like a tool she knew well. Social feeds began to buzz, hungry and loud. Ruth spoke to the room, not the algorithm. "Please, share only what is true and kind," she said. Her request walked past the phones and into hearts. Some thumbs hovered, then lowered, listening. She added a proverb without chapter and verse. A soft answer turns away wrath, she said. Warm. Nobody argued the hallway could feel it land. Wrath looked around for a chair and found none. It chose to stand in the corner and cool off. Brooks called for a minute of quiet, not as a command. Let's breathe, he said, and set the example. Silence arrived with shoes off and stayed a while. In that silence, the better angels set. Up chairs, they handed out clarity like hymnals. When sound returned, it came back gentler. Questions lined up in single file instead of swarming. The baby slept, the grandmother smiled, the pastor exhaled. Ruth felt the room choose a kinder temperature. Surprise had been tamed. Hope took the wheel. Ruth leaned toward the mother with the sleeping boy. What's his name? She asked, voice a soft quilt. Eli, the mother whispered, some fear dissolving. Good name, Ruth said, blessing tucked in the syllables. Names help rooms. Remember they are 4 people. Janet hustled back with incident forms and extra pens. Front row can start, then we'll rotate, she said. Efficiency, war, compassion, like a cardigan. Tyler stood first, video ready but respectful. The line learned from his posture and copied it. Megan from the Gazette lifted her chin for a quote. Ruth met her halfway, measured and fair. Transparency, accountability, and dignity, she said. Everything else will follow those 3. Megan wrote the words like she knew they'd travel. Brooks flagged internal review without fireworks. Standard process will begin today, he said. No victory dance, no grudges dressed as justice. Just steps, numbered by patience and watched by light. The crowd heard it and chose not to rush the clock. Collins approached the clipboard like a confessional. His pen hovered, then committed to the page. Ruth didn't hover over his shoulder. Trust did. Trust stood tall, hands folded, patient as old oak. Even regret likes a little shade while it learns. Ruth turned to the flag and then back to the people. Whatever touched this robe also touched your trust, she said. We'll repair both in the same careful way. Her words stitched the air with visible thread. Hope tugged once and held. A squeak from the cart, a cough, a chuckle near the door. Normal, peeked in again, shy, but determined. The hallway accepted it like a casserole after a funeral. You don't need to love it to let it help. Help, in any flavor, still nourishes. The pastor's wife slid a pack of tissues across the bench. Small mercy, big effect, ripple by ripple. A man who never cries teared up anyway. He said, thank you, like it was a new word. New words can change old stories. Ruth thanked the officers for their cooperation out loud. Some bristled, some softened, most listened. Praise without flattery can tame a room. It invites people to become what you name in them. The invitation. Hung there, warm and brave. Janet organized witness slots for the afternoon session. Megan stepped back to make calls, voice steady. Tyler sent his video to the proper hands, not the crowd. Maria returned to her cart, dignity the machine hummed again, ordinary and faithful. Ruth gathered the lighthouse page and tucked it on top. It felt right, like closing a family Bible without ending the story. She caught Brooks's eye and saw a man aiming truer now. He nodded once. A promise folded into a glance. Promises are stronger when they are quiet. A breeze slipped through the open door to courtroom 3. It carried paper, ink, and the faint courage of oaths. Soon, Ruth said, not to hurry, but to steady. The room agreed with a chorus of small nods. Soon is kinder than later, when repair is needed. She turned toward the bench. She would soon. Occupy the robe might be straight, but authority had been bruised. You could feel the weight of that bruise in the air. It asked for wisdom, not thunder, bomb not blaze. And just beyond the threshold, that reckoning waited to speak. The room reacted like a pond after a thrown stone. Whispers leaped from bench to bench, quick and jittery. A stunned hush braided with the sound of shuffling shoes. Mouths opened, then closed, then prayed under breath. Respect tried to rise, shaky but determined. Ms. Pearl, from the quilting circle, pressed a hand to her. Heart, bless us, she whispered, not sure whom she meant. Her eyes found Ruth and steadied a notch. Steady can be contagious when someone starts it. Ruth let that steadiness spread without a speech. Megan from the Gazette tucked hair behind her ear. She wrote the word dignity in neat block letters. No exclamation marks, just clean truth on a page. Clean truth travels farther than loud rumor. You could feel rumor losing its appetite. Tyler slid his phone into his pocket. Decision made. He chose witness over spectacle grown by a year and a minute. Ruth nodded, blessing the choice with her eyes. Grace likes to be noticed. It multiplies when seen. The boy stood taller by a whisper. Pastor John lifted a palm that said peace, not power. He gathered two folks who were simmering near the back. "Breathe with me," he said, and they did. Anger cooled like a skillet off the burner. Nobody missed the heat when calm tasted better. Janet stacked forms on the front bench, brisk and kind. "Names in order, please," she said. Firm and gentle, pens clicked, courage lined up in ink. The lighthouse watermark winked like a promise. Promises help crowds remember their best selves. A nurse from St. Mark's checked Ruth's shoulder with care. No fuss, just hands that knew what hurt feels like. "Bruised," she murmured, "but strong as ever." Ruth smiled. Not heroic, simply human. Human is the best kind of strong. Collins stood by the flag, apology trying to be born. Words tangled with pride, then untangled again. "Your Honor, I'm sorry," finally crossed the gap. It arrived clean, no perfume, no armor. Ruth received it like water on parched earth. A grandmother in fleece dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "Mercy," she said, tiny and fierce at once. She slipped the tissue to the mother with baby Eli. Kindness traded hands like a warm quilt. "Quilts do the preaching, nobody argues with Mr. Thompson." Asked his question again, steadier this time. "What happens next? For all of us?" he said. Ruth answered plain like a porch conversation. "We tell the truth, step by step," she said, "and we measure justice with mercy's yardstick." The bailiff reset the tone with practiced.com. "One line for statements, one line for seating," he said. Order walked back in wearing soft shoes. No barking, no brashness, just clarity. Clarity is kindness in a busy room. The courthouse camera crew peeked from the doorway. Megan met their eyes with a subtle shake of her head. "Not now," her look said. "Not this way." Even cameras can learn manners when truth leads. They stepped back, and the room exhaled gratitude. Maria from custodial tucked her mop behind the cart. "I saw from the vending machine," she offered. Her details were careful, not dramatic, not shy. Ruth thanked her by name on purpose. Names are small crowns that cost nothing to give. A deaconess from First Baptist folded her hands. She started humming the old hymn under her breath. The tune stitched frayed nerves without asking permission. Music does that, slipping past defenses. Ruth's shoulders softened to shade. The young officer stood closer to Brooks, learning by watching. He kept eyes open, mouth closed, heart awake. Growth like silence with a view. Ruth noticed and tucked away hope for him. Hope is patient when it invests. Collins handed his report to Janet without excuse. Ink told the story straighter than memory likes. He signed where regret and responsibility meet. That signature mattered more than a speech. Paper can hold a man. To his better self, Megan requested a comment. Voice low, respectful. Ruth chose words like a nurse chooses stitches. Transparency, accountability, and dignity, she said again. "Hold us to them," she added, and meant it. Megan wrote, "The echo that would travel. Two cousins near the back started to fuss." "Keep it down," Ms. Pearl said, sweet and brisk. "Decorum, honey," she added with a wink. They smiled despite themselves and settled. Grandma energy can tame a thunderhead. The clock over the door ticked like a metronome. Time did not speed up or slow down for feelings. Ruth set her breath. Too, that steady rhythm. Breath is a prayer you can do without words. The room copied her tempo and calmed. The pastor's wife offered water bottles from a tote. Mercy, in plastic, passed hand to hand. No sermon, just hydration and care. Small deeds untie big knots quietly. Knots seemed willing to loosen. Mr. Alvarez, a veteran, cleared his throat gently. "Respect to the badge, respect to the bench," he said. "Let's make both stronger today." The sentence landed like a flag planted right. Ruth saluted it with her eyes. A murmur rose about social feeds, spinning the story. Ruth addressed it without scolding or fear. "Share facts, not flames," she said simply. "Let kindness be your headline." Some thumbs hovered, then chose silence. Janet double-checked Ruth's docket with calm precision. "Courtroom 3 stays on schedule," she affirmed. Routine returned, grateful to be invited. Order and tenderness held hands in public. Nobody minded that marriage. Linda from the clinic offered a sling, just in case. Ruth declined with thanks, rolling her shoulder once. Pain acknowledged, not enthroned. Dignity does not need to win to hold. Holding was enough for now. Brooks spoke to his team with a new cadence. Eyes open, ears open, hearts open. He said no bark, no bite, just measured trust. Trust is heavier than command, but holds better. The team carried it like good weight. Tyler asked if his video should go to internal review. Ruth nodded toward Brooks and Janet together. "Both," she said, weaving transparency with process. Braids are stronger than single strands. Purpose calms a room faster than authority alone. Ruth let purpose do the talking. Authority followed at a respectful distance. A teacher from Lincoln Elementary asked for guidance. What do we tell our students? Them right? And that courage sounds like a calm voice. The court reporter reset her machine with careful fingers. Keys clicked like rain on a roof that holds. She glanced at Ruth, finding her center again. Centers are generous. The machine purred, ready to record repair. Mr. Thompson stepped forward, calmer, grateful. Thank you for not dodging accountability, he said. Ruth nodded. No flourish, just agreement. Bread that plenty can break. The line for statements moved like a well-tended garden. No shoves, no shortcuts, just patient rows. Janet watered the process with kindness. Shoots of trust poked through hard soil. Everyone noticed without clapping. Pastor? John gathered a few into a quiet circle. Short prayer, long work, he said, smiling. They bowed heads and asked for wisdom, not victory. Wisdom likes modest invitations. It pulled up a chair and stayed. Ruth met Collins halfway with a steady, "Look, we'll let reviews speak fully," she said. No shadow trials in the hallway. Boundaries protect both sides of a bruise. A breeze slipped from the open courtroom and kissed the hall. Soon can be a healing word when spoken. Softly, the hallway believed her MIs. Pearl squeezed Ruth's hand as she passed. "Carry on, dear," she whispered, eyes shining. Ruth squeezed back, strength trading places. The healing had started visible as dawn. The bailiff lifted his chin toward the doors. "Time to seat, folks," he called, warm and clear. Benches welcomed people like pews on a good Sunday. Reverence makes better witnesses. Ruth paused at the threshold, listening inside. The robe felt heavier and lighter all at once, and beyond that light, a deeper bruise began. To speak, the robe felt heavier, not because of fabric, but because trust had been nicked. Ruth knew garments can be mended, promises to still. The bruise on authority pulsed like a quiet drum. Are more than buildings? They're lighthouses for days that go sideways when the light flickers. Boats notice. Pain honest but contained. Her calm wasn't a performance. It was muscle memory. She'd weathered storms softer and storms worse. Loud and rooted. Loud shouts. Rooted listens, stands, and keeps standing. Rooted looks like a grandmother holding a door. It looks like Ruth. Pearls, straight, gaze steady. The room began to lean toward. Rooted, Ms. Pearl folded her hands and lifted her chin. "Hold fast," she whispered, a quilted prayer. Other women echoed it without words. They'd raised kids, buried husbands, kept lights on. They knew the cost of steady when storms blow. Somewhere, a little girl watched from behind her mother's arm. Her eyes searched the robe for safety signs. Ruth made sure her face spelled welcome, not fear. "Coffee, did you hear the waitress said? Topping off cups?" A farmer shook his head, sorrow in his shoulders. The bell on the door rang like a small amen. Pastor John drafted Sunday words at his kitchen table. Not erase truth. Over at the sheriff's office off Route 52, phones rang. Policy binders opened like heavy hymnals. Brooks marked pages with sticky notes and sighs. He circled training plans that needed a second look. Leadership prayed. With its sleeves rolled up, Ruth remembered the day she took her oath. A hand on a family Bible, breath steady as a metronome. "Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly," her grandmother whispered. That trifecta had carried her through darker hallways. It would carry her through this one, too. News trucks sniffed the wind like curious hounds. Megan from the Gazette kept her voice humane. She asked for facts, not fireworks. Dignity photographs better than outrage every time. Janet guarded the records like a librarian of trust. Paper held steady while people found their footing. At Lincoln Elementary, Ms. Perez tweaked tomorrow's lesson. Kids would ask hard questions, and she would welcome them. Small voices deserve big truths told gently. Collins sat alone, radio quiet for once. He traced the chain of moments that went wrong. A script had outrun his judgment by a step. He felt the ache of almosts and repentance whispered, and he didn't argue. Brooks rubbed the bridge of his nose, choosing better. He could defend or he could learn. He chose learn, even if it cost pride. Pride doesn't patch bones or bonds. Grace. She named harm without hating people. Naming well is the first stitch of repair. It was just cloth, nothing magic at all. Yet it meant covenant, service, steadiness, sight. Authority is borrowed, never owned. Borrowed things must be returned in good condition. Choir practice at First Baptist hummed that evening. Altos softened. Their edges, tenors found a kinder note. People sang like they meant the word restore. Music held the bruise without poking it. Sometimes harmony says what speeches can't. At St. Mark's Clinic, Linda packed a small care kit. Ice pack, sling, a handwritten note that read, "We're with you." She left it at Ruth's door like a casserole. Care wore sneakers and moved quiet. Quiet can be a megaphone for love. Miss Carroll called Ruth just before sunset. "Sugar, you all right?" Friendship is God's way of handing out splints. Some folks called mercy weakness by another name. It keeps doors open while truth walks in. It also knows when to lock them after dark. On local radio, DJ Frank kept it simple. No shouting, just facts. He said between weather and school closings. He asked callers to be neighbors, not narrators. The phones calmed. The town breathed deeper. Kind moderation turned down the heat without killing light. The flag outside the courthouse found a steadier breeze. Symbols matter when they behave themselves. Her step felt truer after that small pause. Hope began to act like it lived here. It held doors, poured coffee, passed tissues. It watched over statements and softened voices. And the most amazing thing of all, it stuck around. Ruth gathered her team for a short, clear talk. Our little revivals without the tambourine. Accountability got a schedule, not a slogan. Reviews, retraining, community forums, open reports. Everything spelled in daylight, line by line. No secret corners for shadows to hide. Shadows hate clipboards. And sunlight. Megan asked for a closing line before the evening edition. Ruth gave her one that fit both church pews and bar stools. "Justice with mercy is not soft," she said. "Bruises take time to fade." Some folks waited for the other shoe. Others waited for proof that lessons stuck. That night, Ruth sat by the window with tea. She prayed the small prayer that moves big gears. She could feel tomorrow turning its face. She drafted a note to every witness and worker. "Thank you. I see you. We will be thorough." 3 lines, no flourish. All backbone. Respect is currency. She paid in full. Receipts look like calmer rooms. Brooks finalized a plan that could stand wind. Clear steps, clear eyes, clear follow-through. He called Collins first, then the younger officer. Not to scold, but to shape. Shaping is harder than shouting, and worth it. Janet locked the records room with her careful key. She whispered steady, to no one and everyone. Her footsteps down the hall sounded like trust. Some heroes file instead of fight. Filing can be a front line too. The bruise on authority didn't vanish by sunrise, but it stopped spreading, held by hands that cared. Old women prayed, young men listened, neighbors showed up. The lighthouse bulb burned steady, not flashy. And just then, questions knocked on the door labeled "Why?" Investigators would arrive with clipboards and polite eyes. Radios, reports, and mismatched timelines would speak. Excuses would try to wear reason's jacket. Contradictions would tug at sleeves until truth turned around. In the next room over, that story was already clearing its throat. CLI PBOARDS arrived with quiet shoes and practiced smiles. Internal affairs set up in a side room that smelled like lemon cleaner. Questions came wrapped in courtesy, sharp as sewing needles. Ruth welcomed them with open doors and steady eyes. You could feel the air agree to tell the truth. Brooks handed over reports without flinching. No hedging again, just the paper as it lived. He marked places that needed light, not excuses. Leadership looked like sleeves rolled past the elbow. A good kind of tired settled on his face. Body cam files were collected like shells after a gale. One camera glitched right where the hallway tilted. Glitches happen, sure, but timing can feel like a wink. Ruth didn't accuse. She asked for the raw feed in the log. Logs tell stories equipment would rather forget. Dispatch timelines stretched across the table like laundry lines. A call here, a confirmation there, a name smudged in the middle. The clock and the steps did not dance to the same song. Janet pointed to the smudge that started the misunderstanding. Small smudges can grow teeth when fear feeds them. The union rep cleared his throat to shape the narrative. "Officer safety," he said, laying down a familiar card. "Mistaken identity in a fast-moving scene," he added. Ruth listened without blinking and took notes in calm ink. Calm is where truth can take off its shoes. In another room, Tyler cued his hallway video. Hands a little shaky, courage steady as a porch post. "Ma'am, I recorded this from the bench," he said. Ruth thanked him like he had brought water to a brush fire. The file looked ordinary and felt like daylight. Maria stood by the vending machine in her memory. "From my angle, her hands were open the whole time," she said. Her words were small and accurate, the kind that whole investigators nodded, grateful for unvarnished detail. Detail is where mercy earns its license. Pastor John gave a statement that braided firmness and grace. He did not preach, he described what he saw. Gentle fingers, professional eyes, notes without drama. "Soft tissue strain," she said. "Monitor and rest." Ruth thanked her and refused to dramatize pain. Pain named plainly loses half its power. Megan from the Gazette kept her questions clean. "What corrective steps are on the table?" she asked. "Not a trap, a lamp," Ruth answered. "Process first. People always, to quote, fit both pews and porches." Training manuals were opened like old hymnals, compliance holds, escalation ladders, decision trees. A margin note jumped out: assess identity before restraint. Brooks underlined it like a man circling a promise. Promises are better when they come with homework. The rookie officer wrote a reflective memo by hand. No buzzwords, just where his judgment slipped. "Her calm should have slowed me," he wrote. Humility stood taller than his boots. Ruth made space for his learning to breathe. Collins sat with internal affairs. Shoulders square, he did not hide behind the union rep's coat. "I moved too fast," he said, and it cost him to say it. But cost can be a down payment on better days. His eyes held the ache of almosts. The smudged name on the docket got its own page. Printer streaks, a light toner, a crooked pushpin. Janet recreated the morning with librarian precision. "Here's where the confusion began," she said. "Origin stories matter when you're fixing roots." Security footage from the courthouse hallway rolled. Angles missed some, angles caught enough. A pearl earring glinted like a metronome of truth. Hands stayed open, shoulders braced, dignity unbroken. Silence in the room agreed with what it saw. The union held a short presser on the steps. "Our officers acted in good faith," they said. Good faith met good evidence, and asked to sit together. Ruth did not swat the statement. She outpaced it. Action makes better headlines than sparring. Brooks drafted a retraining plan with real teeth. Scenario drills, identity checks, de-escalation rehearsed aloud. Not a box to tick, a muscle to build. He asked the community to observe the sessions. Windows beat walls every day of the week. A community forum was booked at the church fellowship hall. Folding chairs, coffee urns, name tags with thick markers. Questions first, answers honest. The flyer read, "No podium, just a circle, big enough for disagreement." Circles trick conflict into behaving like neighbors. Ruth prepared her remarks with a Bible open and a pen. A proverb about soft answers waited on the margin. A beatitude about peacemakers hummed behind her ribs. She guarded the middle ground like a garden. Gardens grow slow and feed many. Investigators outlined preliminary findings in plain words. Sequence errors, perception gaps, policy drift. No villains, no halos, just human frailty in uniform. Ruth accepted it without flinching or gloating. Acceptance is the doorway to repair. Discipline considerations landed on Brooks's desk. Consequences that teach, not crush. Suspension with training, supervised return, public apology. Collins signed his name under each step, eyes clear. Owning it is a better teacher than punishment alone. Ruth added a restorative track to the plan. Listening sessions with those who felt trust bend, letters to the community written in first person, a walking beat with local elders as guides, feet learn what memos cannot teach. Megan asked to publish the plan in full. Ruth said yes and meant it. Daylight is cheaper than rumor control. The town read it like a weather report they could prepare for. Umbrellas of patience opened on porches. An anonymous tip slid under the review room door. "Check last winter." It read, "No signature, just ink." A similar hallway, a smaller shove, no report filed. Eyes met over the paper, sober and steady. Patterns do not like to be named, but they must. Brooks reopened past logs without defensiveness. If the shoe fits, he'd measure it and fix the foot. Some entries winced under the light, and then told the truth. Ruth praised the courage of admission out loud. Praise trains the next honest moment to show up. Pastor John offered the fellowship hall for ongoing work. Not a one and done, a table kept set. "Water, chairs, and the belief we can grow." He quoted Micah. Without starting a fight, nobody argued with walking humbly. Janet built a timeline wall with colored cards. Green for fact, yellow for maybe, red for no. She let the town watch cards move as clarity grew. Trust likes seeing the recipe as much as the cake. The wall became a quiet teacher. Collins asked to speak at the forum, nerves visible. Ruth said yes, and the yes was costly and correct. He did not justify. He apologized without perfume. A hush received it like bread after fasting. Bread shared is better than bread defended. The rookie officer promised to mentor rookies after him. He wanted his near miss to become someone else's near void. Ruth blessed the plan with a small nod. Legacy can be born out of a bruise. Bruises fade. Lessons keep their color. Linda closed the clinic late and walked to the hall. She carried bandages and listening, both in steady supply. Neighbors lined up with stories. Not to vent, to mend. Mending sounds like scissors and thread and patience. You could hear Hope cutting cloth to fit. By nightfall, the report draft had bones and breaths. Findings in plain speak. Steps with dates spelled out. No fireworks, only lamps along a path. Ruth read it and felt the click of rightness. Rightness rarely shouts. It hums, and even as the ink dried, the wind shifted. Screens warmed, headlines sharpened, opinions stretched. Coffee counters prepared to host 100 courts of opinion. Some would bless, some would blister, many would simply wonder. The town inhaled, and the chorus outside began to gather. Main Street woke up, opinionated, coffee strong, and voices stronger. At Miller's Diner, napkins became notepads for theories. "Did you hear?" became the morning greeting. Right after, "Good to see you." People leaned over booths as if secrets could fry with the eggs. Curiosity ran ahead of facts, waving its little flag. On the courthouse lawn, neighbors clustered in gentle knots. Aunties from the quilting circle arrived with folding chairs. Someone brought muffins from the Methodist bake sale. Debate smelled like cinnamon and rain on hot pavement. Respect tugged at sleeves, reminding folks to use InsideVoices.Facebook. Groups bloomed with posts, fast and bloomy as dandelions. Some shared the lighthouse page like it was a relic. Others typed with fingers on fire, grief trying to turn into blame. Janet replied with Facts.com as a librarian at Story Hour. Her steadiness earned more likes than outrage did. At St. Mark's, the priest left the sanctuary door open. He lit a candle for wisdom right beside a candle for courage. He said, "Let's be slow to anger, quick to listen." No one asked for a denomination on that advice. Listening does not check your membership card. Across town, Pastor John shaped a brief at the fellowship hall. Questions first, answers honest. The flyer promised again. He stacked chairs in welcoming circles, not rows. Circles make it harder to shout and easier to see faces. Faces soften arguments more than paragraphs do. Talk radio tried to set the temperature a notch hotter. DJ Frank cooled it with a straight, neighborly tone. "No shouting, just facts," he repeated between songs. Callers adjusted like people reaching for a calmer sweater. The town stayed on that frequency. Thank God, at Walgreens, the pharmacist heard 3 versions before noon. She smiled and passed blood pressure cuffs and perspective. "Measure before you panic," she said, and meant both things. Her advice traveled in purses and glove compartments. Practical wisdom makes the best caravan. Megan's evening edition landed on porches wrapped in plain talk. Headlines didn't yell, they invited readers to breathe. Transparency, accountability, dignity there. They were again. Folks read them aloud at dinner tables and in easy chairs. Surprise.com sells papers too. The senior center hosted peanut butter sandwiches and opinions. Ms. Pearl held court with more grace than gavel. "Mercy isn't mush," she reminded a spirited table. "It's discipline with a heartbeat." Heads nodded like sunflowers turning toward sense. Outside the hardware store, Mr. Alvarez drew lines in chalk. "Badge here, bench here, bridge right in the middle," he said. He stood on the bridge and waved both sides closer. People laughed, then stepped where he pointed. Jokes can build scaffolding for truth. A Facebook rumor accused the judge of staging the moment. Tyler posted his raw clip clean and uncut. "Her hands were open," he wrote. "No hash takes." The truth held still while Heat ran out of breath. Heat hates video without a spin cycle. The city council chair recorded a measured statement. "Process is underway. We welcome oversight," she said. "No swagger, no dodge, just doors propped open." It sounded like grown-ups, and grown-ups traveled well. The share button felt useful for once. The Gazette opened a comment section with rules like bumpers. "Be kind, be true, be brief," the banner said. Mods deleted Heat and pinned sources. For once, sources got more hearts than Snark did. Hope looked up, a little startled, a lot pleased at Sacred Heart. Women lit candles for everyone involved. Blue flame for the bruised, white flame for the contrite. They prayed Hail Mary and a whispered psalm. The air smelled like wax and good intention. God heard the whole choir as one voice. The sheriff's office posted a schedule for retraining. Dates spelled out, doors open, eyes invited. Comments arrived, wary, then warmer. "About time, thank you, we'll be there," stacked up. Participation began to sound like a plan. The PTA group text pinged like a woodpecker. "Teach this to the kids," Ms. Perez urged gently. "Adults can err and repair," she wrote again. Moms screenshot the line and sent it wider. A civics lesson put on sneakers in the barbershop. Clippers buzzed while ethics stretched. Men argued soft, not sharp, because Henry keeps rules. No cussing, no cutting folks down, he said. The mirror reflected faces, trying to be better. Hair fell. Pride adjusted. On Nextdoor, a thread tried to turn ugly. Maria stepped in with broom in hand wisdom. Kindness is cheaper than cleanup, she typed. A few neighbors apologized for their first drafts. Edits, it turns out, can be holy. National outlets sniffed around for a splashy angle. Meghan met them with Midwestern manners and spine. Tell it straight or not at all, she said. Some left, some listened. A few stayed to learn. Truth prefers long tables to bright spotlights. Public opinion drifted like a school of fish, then aligned. Not perfectly, but enough to swim together. Make it right became the chorus over coffee and pie. Not vengeance, not victory laps repair. Repair started to sound like a hometown word. An online petition swung through the square like a parade. It asked for accountability and support in the same breath. Both felt new and good on people's tongues. Signatures stacked without venom. The comment box stayed kind longer than usual. The quilting circle stitched a banner for the forum. Justice with Mercy, in calico and careful cursive. They hung it where everyone had to walk under it. Men smiled at the fabric courage. Women winked. Textiles did the preaching and no one argued. A few loud voices still worked overtime for rage. Ruth answered none of them directly. She sent out schedules, facts, and invitations. Silence can be strategy when truth is busy. Busy truth builds things rage cannot. At the farmer's market, peaches and opinions shared tables. Old friends debated like sisters, then bought the same jam. Let's see what the judge does next, one said. Let's help her do it, the other replied. Surprise, Hope Likes Produce stands. Church bulletins printed the forum details in bold. Synagogue announcements echoed the time and place. Civic clubs pledged chairs, coffee, and ushers. Bridges sprouted across streams of difference. Sometimes logistics are the holiest language. Radio callers asked for a public apology from the officers. Brooks called in and promised a clear path. No throat clearing, no hedging, just next steps. The board lit up with thank yous instead of fireworks. Surprise again. Accountability can trend. That evening, porch lights flicked on across town. Women settled with iced tea and long thoughts. Granddaughters asked questions. Grandmothers answered gently. Stories turned from heat to instruction. Instruction is how tomorrow learns its manners. In group chats, someone shared a verse about peacemakers. Another shared a quote about truth, setting us free. Nobody fought over footnotes. They saved their energy for action. Action wore sneakers and carried clipboards. Clipboards learned to walk beside compassion. A few folks worried that softness would dull the edge. Ms. Pearl put it plain on the community page. Soft hearts, strong spines, she typed, then logged off. The phrase stuck to front doors like a welcome sign. Even skeptics found themselves nodding by nightfall. The town had picked a lane. Not perfect, not pure, but pointed toward better. They chose facts over fumes, neighbors over narratives. Hope did a quiet fist pump in the dark, and the question on everyone's lips turned toward the bench. Would the judge speak to them? Woman? Two women, neighbor to neighbor. Would she name pain without lighting torches? Would she show what strength looks like in a blue scarf? Front steps and fellowship halls waited for her voice, and just like that, the town leaned in to hear Ruth herself. The fellowship hall filled before sunset, folding chairs in tidy circles. Ruth stood at the front, blue scarf like calm water. Her shoulder ached, sure, but her spine sang steady. Curiosity crackled like ice in sweet tea. You could taste the room leaning in. She started with the smallest truth first. I got scared, she said, voice warm, unshaking. And then I chose calm on purpose. The words landed like porch steps that don't creak. Everyone felt safer just hearing them. You won't believe what happened to my heartbeat, she smiled. It slowed when I prayed under my breath. Not a sermon, just a neighbor's confession. Hands unclenched along the back row. Peace tried on its jacket and fit. She never weaponized her bruise. She named it, owned it, then tucked it away. I'm not fragile, she said. Gentle, but sure. I'm focused. Focused felt stronger than angry. Ruth told them what she'd do differently. Ask one more question before acting, she said. Leave room for the whole story. The line tasted like cinnamon and common sense. Even skeptics nodded without meaning to. She spoke to the women first, on purpose. To every grandmother who raised a spine with kind hands, she said, I learned my steadiness from you. Ms. Pearl dabbed at happy tears. Strength looked right at home in wrinkles. She lifted the lighthouse page and smiled. Symbols are only as strong as we live them, she said, so we will live them out loud. Janet sat higher, proud as a flag. The room believed the paper. Again, Ruth named the officers without shaming them. People can fail and still be worth teaching, she said. Mercy protects the future. Truth protects the moment. Both and, not either or. It rang clear. Brooks exhaled like a man a fist. She quoted an old verse without a cage around it. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly, she said. No one argued. Everybody needed it. It sounded like a road you could actually walk. Shoes in the room agreed. Here's my commitment, she said, steady as oak. Transparent review, opendoors.com. Tone, firm where needed, soft where healing helps. The plan wore boots, not slippers. Action laced them up. Megan from the Gazette raised a hand. Respectful. What about your own recovery? She asked. Ruth chuckled, rolled her shoulder once. I'll ice it after we finish the work. Laughter loosened the corners of the hall. Tyler held up his phone and then lowered it. I want to learn that calm, he said, blushing. Ruth grinned and gave him homework. Start with listening twice as long as you talk. He typed it like treasure. Collins waited near the coffee urn, pale and steady. Ruth invited him forward. With a nod, he apologized without perfume. Just truth. She shook his hand like a neighbor. The handshake stitched something real. Pastor John offered a one-sentence prayer. Lord, make us brave and gentle, he whispered. No lightning, just collective exhale. Ruth echoed, Amen, and meant it. Gentle started sounding like power. She shared the quiet part out loud. I asked God to keep my heart tender. Tender doesn't mean weak. It means awake. Women in cardigans nodded like choir members. Awake hearts hear better than loud ones. At Lincoln Elementary the next morning, she spoke to kids. Adults mess up and then make it right. She said courage. Sounds like a calm voice. A girl in braids whispered, I want that. Ruth winked. You've already got the start. She wrote handwritten notes at her kitchen table. Thank you for telling the truth, she penned. Thank you for owning your part. Ink carried tenderness where speeches couldn't go. Mailboxes became small altars for repair. On local radio, she kept it neighborly. No villains, just responsibility, she said. We'll fix systems and coach people. Her tone poured cold water on wildfire. Callers thanked her for sounding like home. She met with the union without theatrics. Training must be muscle, not memo, she said. Mercy needs guardrails. Officers need rest. They didn't agree on everything, but they listened. Listening moved the needle a notch. At Walgreens, Mrs. Green asked for a hug. Ruth laughed and obliged without ceremony. Strong hug, soft heart, Mrs. Green said. Right back at you, Ruth answered. Aisle 7 felt like church for a minute. She visited Linda at St. Mark's Clinic. Let the nurse fuss. Let the ice pack work. Obey the care, Linda warned, smiling. I will, Ruth said, and mostly did. Self-respect includes rest at the sheriff's office. She faced the team. Courage isn't loud, she told them. It's choosing the better step when pride screams. A few eyes got shiny and looked away. Shine is proof the message got in. She walked Main Street without an entourage. Kroger, the hardware store, the post office line. Every hello turned into a small pledge. We've got your back, folks said. I've got yours, she answered, and meant it. The PTA invited her to a Tuesday night. She spoke between bake sale plans and bus routes. Teach kids to repair faster than they blame, she said. Moms wrote it on fridge lists. Fridges became little civics classrooms. She went home and iced the shoulder. Miss Carroll called with cornbread and 3 jokes. They laughed till the ache forgot itself. Joy does that, sneaks past pain like a friend. The house felt lighter by bedtime. A few voices poked at her patience online. She didn't clap back. She stayed on mission. Facts at noon. Updates by evening, she posted. Predictability outperformed drama by a mile. Drama hates schedules. She started a porch hour at the courthouse steps. No speeches, just listening with a notebook. People brought worries and left with clarity. Clarity walked them to their cars. Cars drove home kinder. At choir practice, she took the alto part, breathing deep, counting rests, blending on purpose. Music reminded her how to lead, together. No solo could do what harmony did. Harmony felt like policy done right. She met with Maria by the vending machine. Your details kept us honest, Ruth said. Maria shrugged, proud and shy at once. Truth likes simple words, she replied. They shared a Snickers and a smile. Sunday came with candles and casserole plans. Ruth sat between strangers, not on a platform. A psalm floated like warm light on winter skin. She whispered, Keep me soft and strong. Soft and Strong shook hands and stayed. She drafted one more letter before bed. To the girl at the back who watched me. You taught me to keep my face kind. Thank you for your brave eyes. Somewhere, a future judge felt seen. You could feel surprise settling into respect, not the dazzled kind, the durable kind. It sounded like doors held open and tempers kept. It looked like routines with gentler edges. Hope moved from guest to tenant. Next week, she told Brooks, we walk the plan. Not in a sprint, in a steady march. Long roads like honest feet. Brooks grinned, shoulders lighter. Honest feet had a map now, at dusk. Porch lights winked across town. Grandmothers sipped tea and told granddaughter stories. See that scarf? They said. That's what strength looks like. Not louder, truer. And the very next morning, strength would start leaving footprints. The bruise didn't vanish. It learned to teach. Morning by morning, Main Street asked better questions. The courthouse felt less like marble and more like covenant. People showed up with patience tucked in their pockets. Curiosity leaned over the rail and whispered, what did we learn? Porch hour kept its spot on the steps, rain or shine. Neighbors brought folding chairs and real concerns. Ruth listened with a notebook and a steady chin. No speeches, just course. Corrections in plain English, small fixes added up like dimes in a jar. Policy left the binder and walked the beat. De-escalation drills became Tuesday and Thursday. Identity checks turned into habit, not hope. Reports published on time, names spelled right. Transparency wore work boots, not a halo. Lincoln Elementary rewrote a week of civics. Repair before blame, the chalkboard said in cursive. Kids practiced apologies that kept dignity intact. Role plays turned hallways into laboratories of kindness. Teachers smiled like gardeners at first green shoots. At the sheriff's office, training got human on purpose. Officers rehearsed .com until .com became muscle. Community observers took notes without gotcha games. Same team, Brooks said, and meant it twice. Uniforms and neighbors learned each other's names. The faith calendar filled with listening nights. Sanctuaries hosted circles, not stages. Pastors and priests shared coffee and questions. Prayers came from both hymnals without fuss. Peacemaking learned to wear denim and pearls. The Gazette printed a code for itself and us. Be kind, be true, be brief. On page 1, editors pinned sources. Commenters copied the tone. Phones cooled to a neighborly temperature. Rumor got fewer chairs at the potluck. Janet turned the records room into a lighthouse. Timelines stayed on the wall for anyone to read. Green cards moved slow. Red cards moved honest. Come see, she'd say, unlocking without flinch. Truss loved the sound of that key. Collins changed the way rookies learn fear. He taught them to notice, calm, and slow down. Her hands were open, he'd say, voice steady. Humbled, yes, but not undone. Failure became a well he drew wisdom from. The rookie led drills for rookies younger than him. He carried a notebook, not a swagger. Listen twice, act once. On the cover, he said it till muscle memory nodded. Humility stopped being rare. It got cool. Ruth wrote opinions with spine and softness. Firm law, warm language, no theatrics. Justice with mercy serves the whole town, she'd ink. Her sentences felt like levees that hold. Appeals got shorter because clarity traveled. Victim support got louder in all the right ways. Nurses, advocates, a hotline that answered quick. No maze, no shame, just doors that opened. People whispered thank you in waiting rooms. Hope sat beside them, unannounced and faithful. New signs appeared in the courthouse halls. Plain words, warm tone, arrows that made sense. Accessibility felt like hospitality, not charity. A welcome desk learned half the town by name. Dignity smiled from behind the plexiglass. Tyler started a youth council with friends. They filmed calm moments, not chaos. For once, clips of listening. Got more views than drama? Kindness is content, their tagline said. Grandmothers shared every post with gusto. The lighthouse symbol left the stationery. Pins on lapels, decals on squad cars, stickers on lockers, not as flare as promise. Light that doesn't move even when storms do. You could spot it and breathe easier. Past dockets got a second look without defensiveness. 2 cases reopened. 1 quietly corrected. No headlines, just rightness done on purpose. People noticed anyway and trusted harder. Admitting is a bridge. Crossing is healing. Restorative circles saved lawsuits and relationships. Not always, but often, and that mattered. Apologies arrived with repair plans attached. Meetings ended with handshakes, not grudges. You could hear sleep get better on both sides. Funding shifted from shiny to sturdy. Less glitz, more training. More wellness, more rest. Brooks fought for time off like it was gear. Burnout went down. Patience went up. He said stewardship, and folks saw what he meant. The quilting circle turned into a civic guild. Soft hearts, strong spines on every banner. They staffed forums, brewed coffee, hugged nervous speakers. The town let grandmother wisdom set. The table, rage found fewer places to sit. A day of repair joined the calendar in late spring. Work gloves, hymn hums, clipboards, casseroles. Neighbors fixed porches and policies before noon. Afternoon held listening, evening held pie. Traditions start small and then start running. Nearby towns drove in to take notes. They asked for templates and took home courage. Ruth shared everything without branding it. Just do the next right thing, she said. Blueprints traveled in, backpacks and hearts. A letter came from a girl with braids. I watched you keep your face kind, she wrote. I want to be a judge when I'm big, Ruth cried the good kind, and wrote back long. Seeds know what to do in good soil, Ruth's. Prayers got simpler and braver. Lord, keep me tender, keep me true, at dawn. At dusk, make me quick to listen. No thunder, just steady lamplight inside. Her spine learned to sing with her breath. Scripture kept showing up like a neighbor with soup. Micah on Mondays, a psalm on tired Thursdays. The Good Samaritan. Visited training nights. Beatitudes, sat on the bench without fuss. Both pews felt equally at home. The story stopped being about one robe. It became a long, humble chorus. A town decided to be teachable together. They tripped, they fixed, they kept walking. Walking turned into culture. Kroger lines got softer on rough days. Go ahead, said more than one voice. Cashiers learned the look of someone running thin. Kindness comped the cost where it could. Grace rounded up to the nearest hope. The flag outside learned a quieter wave. Respect didn't need thunder anymore. Marble felt like covenant again, not stone. People touched the rail like a promise. Promises kept better hours than rumor. The tale became a caution without a cudgel. Don't sprint past discernment, folks would say. Don't let fear write your script. Coffee counters practiced the lines till they stuck. Wisdom likes repetition with love in it. Ruth started planning to hand the torch. Well, mentoring notes. An open binder labeled Teach, Legacy, not Spotlight, Seed, not Statue. She wanted the next woman ready and rested. Good exits are part of good service. And still, life stayed gloriously ordinary. Choir practice, grocery runs, dentist at 10. Underneath, a stronger current held the town. Surprise gave way to trust. Trust made room for joy. And somewhere ahead, a new hallway waited its test. A final ripple reached where it needed to. Remember, the open hands people said softly. Remember the lighthouse when clouds roll in? Remember Mercy's velvet handle on steel? And one more time, curiosity leaned in for what's next. Not the end, just the door to tomorrow. A door with light under it and shoes by the mat. You can almost hear the knob turn, gentle as a prayer. Will we answer the next knock with courage and care? The hinges, friend, are already warm. You've just walked a whole town from shock to steady. Now it's your street, your porch, your voice. What would change if you led with a calm breath before a hot take? If you chose repair over blame this week, cat home, at church, at the grocery, line who might sleep better tonight because of you. Have you ever felt a bruise on trust at work and family, in community? What did you do first, and what do you wish you'd done instead? When fear tries to write your script, could you borrow Ruth's line? Listen twice, act once, and see what doors it opens? Who needs a porch hour with you 30 honest minutes? No speeches, just ears. What would it look like to practice? Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with both Catholic and evangelical neighbors at the same table. And if a hard moment knocks tomorrow, what's your lighthouse, your non-negotiable that keeps you steady? If this journey stirred your heart, I'd love to keep walking with you. Subscribe and gently tap the bell so new chapters find you right on time. Share this with a friend who loves strong spines and soft hearts, ready to try one small act of repair today. Tell me below what it is and who you'll bless first.